Kolkata, as you might be aware, has two big universities. One is Jadhavpur, one is Calcutta University, and Jadhavpur has had a reputation of being, progressive and sort of moving with things, moving with the time. So we had the sexual awareness, sexual harassment cell fairly early from 1999, soon after the Vishaka judgment, but definitely after JNU. So following the JNU guidelines. But what I would like to talk about a little bit, as our chairperson has just outlined, the issues which I think were flagged in the morning session but didn't really come up for that much of discussion. One is the issue of caste, as you brought up. And the other one is that, how the sexual harassment cell very often becomes a kind of general redressal cell, which is having to tackle a lot of issues which are not perhaps in its purview. So probably what is the ambit of the cell? Should we limit the ambit of the cell or maybe just leave it fairly open so that different kinds of problems can be addressed, because there are no other committees and it's supposed to be one progressive unit within a university which is generally insensitive. So perhaps it's good not to narrow down our ambit of work and keep it a little loose, a little open, a little flexible, so that different kinds of issues can at least be recognized and then probably channelized in some other way. Probably we don't have the expertise or the mandate to deal with all complaints, but the complaints probably there is no harm in the complaints coming in. The other issue which Nandini flagged towards the end of the previous session, I think that's a very, very important issue, and we were discussing this over lunch as well, is the different kinds of power hierarchies. Caste is one of them, but there are other kinds of axes of difference and hierarchy. Increasingly, Nandini spoke about the changing composition of our classrooms, the rural-urban divide. But the other thing that we are seeing very, very prominently now, at least in the Jadhavpur campus, is a kind of regionalism, which when we were growing up as students, we didn't sort of experience as acutely as we are doing now. And one of the sort of flashpoints of this regionalism seems to be the increasing influx of northeastern students. And I think this is something that also affects Delhi, it affects other campuses. I mean, I know about Delhi, but I don't know about other campuses that much. With a growing visibility of, a large contingent of northeastern students who are perceived as being very different, who are perceived as being very westernized, they speak in English. They usually sort of hang out with, their own kind, so to say. They don't mix very much. And there is this sort of growing resentment, and the women, the girls, dress in Western clothes. So there is, I mean, in the Jadhavpur campus, this is something that I've been witnessing, over the past 5 or 6 years. It's really growing to a point where it's becoming quite alarming. And I'd just like to share an incident that happened year before last. This is an engineering student from Shillong who, there was a stabbing incident. And she was stabbed in the corridor of a university building. And she refused to reveal the name of the assailant, and there was some understanding that she knew the assailant, but she didn't want to reveal his name. And because this was a case of assault, we had to involve the police, and the media got involved in a very big way. But what was the most disturbing, apart from the case of stabbing, etc., what was the most disturbing thing about the incident was how students sort of teamed up, because we were concerned about her security. She was living off campus in a kind of PG residence, and particularly on the day that she got stabbed, and she was taken to hospital. They released her after stitches, etc. So we were quite concerned about where she would live that night, stay that night, and a few nights afterwards. So we, having discussed this with the VC, we decided that we could put her in the girls' hospital. And I'm really quite ashamed to be, saying this about an institution which I'm a part of. There was a sort of huge gang of girls who sort of approached us in the middle of the night, because it happened in the evening by the time we got her into the hostel, etc., it was quite late, who approached us and said that, our safety is being compromised, you can't put her here, besides, she knows the assailant, this is a private matter, etc. It really got very ugly, and you could see a face of, sort of regionalism on the campus, which was quite disturbing. And then, the whole case, I don't want to get into the details of it, but played out in a rather disturbing and ugly manner. Similarly, there is a kind of resentment, not of the same order, against students from the south. We get a lot of students from the south, particularly in our science departments. There is also a kind of, I don't know whether it's peculiar to Jadhavpur or not, and we don't talk about it that much, there is a kind of interdisciplinary, almost warfare, battle going on. And in Jadhavpur there is this sort of huge, there is a kind of bond between the engineering technology sections and between the arts and sciences. We call, the engineering section Jhunjhunwala Spar. So Jhunjhunwala Spar is, the sort of the badlands of the Jadhavpur campus. And there is a constant kind of assumption on the part of the engineering students that the art students are silly and stupid, and most of them are girls and looking for husbands in the engineering faculty. And this is a very, very sort of, I'd say it like this, but this is fairly serious. And we constantly get incidents of harassment, which are, again, and this is again something I don't know how we are going to address, of collective harassment, and very often anonymous harassment, because many of these arts, the girl students of the arts department don't know these guys from the engineering department. They come in course. It's not just lewd remarks and simple things like that. Very often, particularly in a press situation, there is heavy molestation and all kinds of things going on, and we get complaints, but we find it absolutely impossible to address. And again, then we are talking about prevention strategies. Because there are certain kinds of cases which you can't address through the normal procedures of the harassment cell, because you can't sort of call the entire engineering faculty, and this is where also the faculty gets involved. Engineering teachers then sort of feel that the sexual harassment committee is largely consisting of these women from the arts department, and they're just holding up our boys and giving them a hard time. We have representatives of the engineering faculty, computer science, which is not considered, again, hard engineering, not mechanical, not civil. And these are important issues. These are disciplinary issues, but I think these create axes of difference which are quite serious and can get quite problematic. Maybe this is very peculiar to Jadhavpur, I don't know. You have experiences elsewhere. Maybe you can share that. And some of this also, because we were talking about, again, we are supposed to be talking about prevention strategies, perhaps we also need to be talking about, how we can address some of these things through disciplinary teaching as well. Because, engineering students have to take two humanities options, English and sociology. So we often go in to teach them. And we use these classes, not to teach either English or sociology, and you can imagine what we are trying to get across. A general respect for the humanities, which is what these classes are meant to be anyway. And the other thing, I think, which is a useful tool, which has probably been quite useful in the Jadhavpur context again, is the fact that the School of Women's Studies, which is fairly active in Jadhavpur, has a long history within the institution, has a certain kind of standing within the academic sort of campus. We have started undergraduate pass courses in women's studies, and we have actually incorporated sexual harassment as part of the course of study within that pass course. And this pass course is often taken by people across the disciplines. So perhaps we should also think of not just tackling sexual harassment through procedural means, but maybe through academic means as well. It's possible, and we can probably think about it or talk about it. And we also have things like short-term legal literacy courses which we run from the school, which are again attended by a cross-section of students who then get familiarized with issues of harassment, issues of sexuality, which can then, lead to a certain kind of awareness. So not just having, IEC material or regular workshops, but also maybe thinking of tackling this through a more regular academic curricular mode can be, one way of thinking it through. The other issue which was raised, and I think, that's a very pertinent issue, I forgot who asked the question about trans people, the question about, people who identify as women, etc., and whether, we should have a law which is gender neutral or not. Now, this is something which is a huge, big debate. All I can say is that we've had a gender neutral law always in our campus. We have received to date a single complaint from a boy against a group of other boys, but we haven't received complaints, say, from a boy against a woman or a girl student, etc., as yet. But having said that, I also need to urge perhaps that, apart from being, in many ways a campus where there are lots of these very hostile differences, it is also a campus which we can see very clearly is very homophobic. And this is something that we discovered actually because I started a queer studies course within the English department. And as part of the course requirement, the students sort of took up the survey in the campus, and the results were quite horrific. And Jadhavpur is supposed to be, as I began by saying, one of the more progressive institutions of the city. And there are, and this is again another point which was raised in the morning, which I would like to flag a little bit, and perhaps we can discuss this a little more, is the overlap between harassment and ragging. Because a lot of ragging is very sexualized, and everywhere it is, and a lot of ragging is also very homophobic. And perhaps we need to evolve mechanisms where the anti-ragging committee and the sexual harassment committee are working in tandem. We've tried to do that, and it works well. And we have, committee members who are shared across the two groups. Etc. So perhaps that is something that we can discuss. I mean, because this is something that and particularly because we have this residential engineering students, the ragging on campus is pretty serious. And as I said, a lot of it is sexualized, a lot of it is homophobic. The other thing which again came up in the morning, which I would like to underline a little bit, again not to talk about it in great detail, is the status of the committee, because I think this is something that bothers all of us, the standing of the committee, how binding are our recommendations. After a point, if constantly your recommendations are overruled, the committee itself loses credibility and morale. And it's very difficult to, keep your spirits high and then just do the good work. And it's difficult to have, new committee members when the credibility of the committee itself becomes doubtful. And this is particularly in relation to, what is the status of the sexual harassment committee within an institution vis-a-vis other legal and semi-legal bodies of the country.